Hey there, friends and enemies, Joby here again, and today I want to go over the 10 cards I'm most excited about picking up in the upcoming Spider-Man Magic the Gathering set. A couple caveats right off the bat. First off, these aren't necessarily the strongest cards, just the ones that fit decks I either already have or plan on building. I'm also not going to include the Soul Stone, even though I think it's one of the stronger cards in this set, and I will be adding it to a deck if I do get it, but I think that card has been talked about enough, so I want to go over 10 cards that are not the Soul Stone essentially. So starting off, I do want to mention Hydro Man. This is a very interesting card. So for 2 blue, it is a 2/2 elemental villain creature. Whenever you cast a blue spell, if Hydro Man is a creature, he gets +1/+1 until end of turn. At the beginning of your end step, untap Hydro Man until your next turn. He becomes a land and gains tap to add a blue mana. He is not a creature during this time. Why I like this card so much is you can use him in a multitude of ways. Obviously, you can buff him up during your own turn, which is really, really nice because you can essentially just cast multiple spells, make them a 4/4, 5/5, depending on how many you can cast in a given turn. And then the second part I think is more important though. So at the beginning of your end step, when you untap him and make him a land, essentially, this is really advantageous because it will allow you to cast instant speed spells, typically counter spells if you are a blue player, and blue would benefit for both of these abilities. And I think that's why this card is really a good option to add to a lot of decks where you are spell slinging quite a bit. Now, it's not a perfect card by any means. It is easily removed by either creature removal during your turn or a land removal during somebody else's. However, I do feel like it is the type of card that could provide a lot of versatility, especially for only 2 blue mana. So I feel like it can essentially act as an opponent's turn mana rock and always threaten that counterspell or other type of option when you have them on the field. Next up, I want to mention Tombstone. This is another villain that I think is going to be hyper specific, and he is going to be in your villain decks essentially. And why I really like him is I am projecting a little bit of what is to come and how many villains we could get in the other potential Marvel crossover Universe Beyond sets in the future. So that's why I think he's going to be good. We've seen villains in the past as well in Magic, and I do feel like building a villain deck and having him be a part of it makes a lot of sense. So he costs 2 colorless and a black for a 2/2. When Tombstone enters, return target villain card from your graveyard to your hand. Already a nice little effect. And then villain cards you cast cost 1 villain spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So essentially, he can help with casting those villains, but also returning one to your graveyard. And then you can essentially use him to sacrifice him if necessary in the future, if you don't really need to be casting any other villains. He's obviously a black creature, so sacrifice is going to be a big thing. And yeah, I just think in sack decks, in decks where you're basically, if you're playing a villain deck, he's going to be almost a must add. And as an uncommon, I do like the fact that he should be readily available to pick up. So I do feel like this is the type of card that might be a bit underrated once the set drops. If you are not building villain decks, he's not going to be nearly as good. But if you're looking forward to doing so, he's going to be one that I think is going to be really, really nice. Then we have Web of Life and Destiny. And this one is very interesting to me because I think a lot of people understand how good it's going to be, but I still think it is the type of card you can add to such a variety of decks. It is mythic, so it's going to be a bit harder to obtain. It also costs 6 colorless and 2 green. However, I will be hard pressed to find a time frame where you'll actually cast the spell for that much. So I wouldn't worry about that because it has Convoke. Your creatures can help cast a spell. Each creature you tap while casting a spell pays for 1 or more mana of that creature's color. So I do feel like This is the type of card in a green deck with a lot of big creatures that you will be casting for a lot less than the 8 mana for sure. At the beginning of combat on your turn, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. So you can essentially just search continuously for creature cards as a green deck. This is one that is going to be very, very effective because obviously green has a lot of creatures. It also is one where you're going to have a lot of big creatures, and if that's the case, you're going to be able to search for them very consistently. And the top 5 cards not going into your graveyard either means that you can cycle through your deck and find a lot of those big beefy creatures very, very quickly. I think this enchantment is going to be very good, and being able to do that every turn is kind of insane. Obviously, you still have to cast those creatures. However, yeah, you can search essentially for one of those 5 cards to be a creature. If you're a creature heavy deck, especially, this is going to be very, very good. So I do feel like this is going to be one of those cards that a lot of people are going to try to pick up. Then we have one that I think is going to be, again, underrated maybe a little bit. Maybe a lot of people will like this one. But Morloon, Devourer of Spiders. X and 2 black for a 2/1. Vampire villain who has lifelink. Morlun enters with X +1/+1 counters on him. When Morlun enters, he deals X damage to target opponent. Now, we don't really have a lot of these effects on black cards, and so because of that, I think he gains some extra value. Essentially, if you're looking to fireball your opponent, this is going to be the way if you're not playing a red deck. If you have black in your deck, this is one that I do think will provide a lot of value. And I can already think of a lot of decks that this could really provide a ton of benefit. Plus, that lifelink really helps out as well, especially if you do a bunch of damage. You can really change the game towards the latter stages if you have a bunch of mana. Say you have Dark Ritual, you have mana rocks, all that kind of good stuff, and you're able to cast this guy, and then not only does he deal the X damage to target opponent, but also get those +1/+1 counters, so you can essentially have a giant creature and do a bunch of damage and have that lifelink. So again, this is one of those cards that I'm really looking forward to, and I think my Sephiroth deck, I think he would be very, very good in, and there's some others that I definitely want to add him to as well. The next card is actually not because it's great, but because I play a ton of Penny Parker in the Marvel Rivals game, and so because of that, I do actually want this in my collection. I want to add it to a deck, and if I don't build around it as my commander, because it doesn't feel like it's going to be all that strong there, I definitely want to find a role for it so it can fit and hopefully add some value. For 3 colorless, a white and a blue, it's a 4/4 with vigilance. When Penny Parker essentially enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So in some of your equipment or decks that are white and blue, this could be really decent, pretty expensive for card draw, but ultimately, if you are playing a modified creature type deck, then you can draw a card almost every turn that you can deal combat damage. So especially if you find a creature that has flying, for example, and is hard to block, maybe you can hit opponents for a bit of damage, and obviously adding that additional card draw is nice. I don't think this card is going to be all that great, to be honest, but again, just personally, because that was my first main in that game, I almost feel obligated to build around her. Then we have one that I think is actually going to be the first commander I build from this set if I am able to snag him right away, and that's Cosmic Spider-Man. This is the full gamut. It's got white, blue, black, red, green for a 5/5 spider human hero with flying, first strike, trample, lifelink, haste. At the beginning of combat in your turn, other spiders you control gain flying, first strike, trample, lifelink, and haste until end of turn. Now, no indestructible, no protection, nothing like that. So it is susceptible to board wipes. It's pretty much one of those cards that you're going to have to cast and use as you bring him out. So you essentially want to set it up to where you are going to be able to take everybody out as quickly as possible once you bring them in. Maybe you have a ton of spiders on your team already. This is going to be the commander for a full blown multicolored spider deck. Say you want a full 5 mana spider deck for whatever reason, or you just want to use a bunch of heroes from this set. This is going to be the one for you, especially because, again, with all of them getting flying, first strike, trample, lifelink, and haste, you can potentially alter the entirety of the game. Just keep in mind that anybody who sees him enter the field is going to try to get rid of him as soon as possible, because essentially it will be game over if he doesn't. Now we're getting to the last few, and I think all of these are incredibly strong and also versatile, so that's why they are my top 4. Starting off with Behold the Sinister Six. This is a 6 colorless and a black. Return up to 6 target creature cards with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. I primarily play Commander, so because of that, this is going to be pretty easy to use because all my creatures have different names. So that's just basically every card that I have. And I do have some decks where I'm trying to bring creatures consistently back from the graveyard. And while very expensive, again, this is one of those cards that late in the game or whenever you're able to cast it, say you use some other options, it returns the creatures to the battlefield and not to your hand. And I think that's massively important because you can go from a losing board position into one that is fairly dominant if you play your card right. So I do feel like this is one of those cards that I can see getting some usage. Again, very expensive, so not as good as not one of the best cards in Magic or anything like that, but I do feel like it's one that will see a lot of value and could be very, very useful, especially in decks that have some mana to play with as well. Then we have Spider-Punk, and Spider-Punk is actually insane. It is a 1 colorless and a red for a 2/1 with Riot. This creature enters with your choice of +1/+1 or haste. Other spiders you control have Riot as well. And then the spells and abilities can't be countered. Damage can't be prevented. This would obviously be included in the Cosmic Spider Man set deck. If you do build that, it's a no-brainer. Any Spider-Man type or Spider-Man set deck that you make that has spider named creatures in it that also has red will have this as a must include. But spells and abilities can't be countered is actually kind of crazy. Damage can't be prevented, also very crazy. Remember, that doesn't say damage to you can't be prevented. That's all damage can't be prevented. So this might be one that you'll see a lot in, for example, red decks, like I was talking about, like a fireball type effect earlier on. If you're trying to do big red spell damage, spells can't be countered, so that's very nice. This will be very annoying to play against if you're a blue player. However, just remember, this is going to be a relatively easy card to get off the table. It only has 1 defense. Even if you give it the +1/+1 counter, it's not going to be all that hard to take out. I do feel like this is the type of card, though, that will be very, very good, and people will find some incredible usage for it, for sure. Then we have With Great Power. This one, I think, is perfect for any kind of equipment or aura deck. It's 3 colorless and a white for an enchantment as enchant creature you control. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each or an equipment attached to it. All damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to enchanted creature instead. I just picture a cloud deck where he's able to essentially hoover up all of the equipment onto himself, get 2/2/2 for all of them, and yeah, I think that could be pretty insane. I don't think this card is going to be like overwhelmingly strong. It's not going to be the most powerful, but I do feel like this is one that could become a staple of some of those Voltron and equipment decks where essentially it's going to just add an additional value. And at the very least, it gets +2/+2 because this counts as an aura, so it gets that right away. And then again, if you need to essentially keep yourself alive if somebody else is trying to do a lot of damage to you in a given turn, take you out, this is one of those cards that you can pop on and kind of stall out the game a little bit until you can create a better board state. Next up, and finally, at the number 1 position, we are going to have Interdimensional Web Watch. And the reason I have this at number 1, I don't think it's the best card in the set, but I do think for the value, this one is actually pretty interesting, and I think this one might be the most underrated from what I've seen people talking about. And again, I could be wrong. We haven't got a chance to use these, so take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt. It costs 4 mana, colorless. When this artifact enters, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next step, you may play those cards. Add 2 mana, or tap it to add 2 mana of any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast spells from exile. Now, I think we're at the point in Magic where there's a lot of cast from exile type of effects. And with a blue-red deck maybe that has a lot of cast from exile type cards, maybe you have you want to be casting multiple cards, multiple spells per turn. I do feel like this is the type of card that would be very good. Now, the first effect essentially is only like a 2-turn effect, essentially, because you exile cards and you can play them until the end of your next turn. But remember that those 2 cards, because you can't look at them, that's one of the downsides. So you want to make sure you can surveil or otherwise look at the top cards on your deck in order to make sure that you are actually getting cards that you'll be able to cast. But then remember that because you can use until the end of the next turn, you can essentially have a turn to set up, cast this, exile those spells, and then the next turn you'd be able to do a bigger turn because you can tap this for that 2 mana and then also tap cast those spells from exile. So there's a lot of possibility there. Again, it does take a lot of setup, so I do feel like I understand why people might not think this is as good as I do, but I've already kind of been thinking about a bunch of different decks that I can add this to really take advantage of casting spells from exile and just spell slinging multiple spells in a turn in general. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think in the comments down below? What do you like and dislike about my list? Are there any things that you think I am underrating personally? Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video as always, comment, subscribe, have a good one. I'll catch you all later.